Two. Alright, could I get someone just to please close that door? Anyone that wants to come in, just will have to open it up. Awesome. Alright, first of all, welcome to the workshops, or the Industry Elite workshops. Little insight, this is the first time I've personally ever done something like this, but the purpose of this workshop is to show you all a track from scratch. And really, sort of the mindset I follow, or just sort of like, I guess, process-based and things that I do to help me write tracks in a quick and efficient sort of way. So this is as raw as it gets. I've done no sort of planning. I've got some ideas, some potential possibilities, and we're just gonna get stuck into it. Sound good? We're all ready? Yeah. All right, so if you don't know me, I love my house music. I'm a sucker for house music. So I always like to start the beat per minute, probably around like the 128. Now, the best tip I can give anyone for writing music and writing music quickly is to create a template in Ableton or the DAW that you use. So as you can see here, I have it's like preloaded. I've just started a new live set, but I've got the groups all ready to go. So I've got my low end, I've got drums, I've got synths, I've got effects, noise, and vox, short for vocals. So with the low ends, if we open that up, I've got my kick, bass line, and I've actually got little bits of individual processing on it. I can't tell you how much this has helped me save time when starting to write a track. So to create your own preset, essentially, you literally just load up a new project, no matter the DAW that you use. You literally just group what you need to group, put all the processing that you need to put on there, and then you will just save it. So that's the number one advice and best tip I can give for writing music quickly. So I'm going to just start randomly with a kick. So I'm going to go to sample packs, which I've got here, and I am going to go into my own sample pack, which is available to purchase. Shameless promo, I know. But you know what? I'm going to play a couple, and you guys tell me which ones sound good. All right? That one sounds good. Whoever said that, yeah. Sweet. So I'm just going to chuck it into here, make sure I'm chucking it at the start, and we're going to use it here. Now, whenever I chuck something new into my project, I instantly am turning it down in volume, because if you're not doing this, if you're not automatically turning something down when you're putting in, essentially frequencies are fighting for space, and if you're not turning it down, it's just going to sound really, really unpleasant. So I always just turn it down, and then I'll, play it and see, okay, yep, that's loud enough. Now, from here, I can go a multitude of different ways. I could say write a bass line, I could maybe try and write some drums, but there is a vocal sample that I did stumble across, and I believe, hang on, let me actually go into the right folder, and it was this one. So I'm thinking that vocal there could be like a really cool vocal to be repetitive and repeat throughout the track. And every vocal that you're going to find on Splice or wherever you find your samples, they're going to be different types of vocals. What I mean when I say that is you'll listen to something and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can envision that being played out throughout the whole record. Or a different vocal could just be like the vocal you hear before a drop. So this one, I personally envision it as it would actually be played out throughout the record, kind of a bit repetitive, but it helps drive the record. So I'm gonna just expand the vocals channel, chuck it in here, and just make sure that I turn down the mixer. So if I play it now, right, sounds way out of time, right? No doubt we've all had that as producers in the room, yeah, where it's like, that does not sound in time. Yep, you're nodding your head, we've all been there. So this is generally because of the warping side of things. So if you double click on it, I can see here it's automatically warped to 94.48, which is incorrect. If you look up the name here, it gives you, obviously after this, the after party, but it actually gives you the beat per minute that it was recorded at. So that
beat per minute needs to match what the warp is. If it doesn't, then it's not going to be in time. So the simplest way to do that, this is obviously for the Ableton users, no doubt it will be the same across all DAWs, but in Ableton, you just hit warp and then you hit it again. It's going to automatically load to the root beat per minute that it is up here, but then from there, you can just bring that down to 124, and then hopefully... So it's just a little bit delayed, but it is actually in time. So I would probably want this to hit a little bit sooner, so a little bit too soon in my opinion. Let's just have a suss. I think that sounded good. Yeah, what do we say? Good? Sweet. Awesome. All right, so let's... Let me just get this all sorted. So maybe see if this actually... Now that I've figured out the vocal and I've got that in timing, a lot of the time what I do is I actually mute it. Because when you then start to add in other elements like your drums and your synths, as I mentioned earlier, you're adding a lot of things into the project, so it starts to become sometimes a little bit too full on. So strip it back, make it less is more. So we've now muted the vocals, so we've got the kick, so the two things I would then add in would be either bass line or the drums. But I'm going to go to the bass line. Now, I've got my own sort of preset effect here, but I actually want to give a different one a go. So I'm going to go, it's got this mid-bass plug was what I've called it. It's just a sound that I've saved. Yep, Serum 1, OG, I know. We're just going to extend that, and we're going to just open up the MIDI. Now, I'm not classically trained or musically trained in any way, shape or form. I'm very open about that. I can't play a musical instrument. But this is why I love technology and I love Ableton. I know that the vocal that we've got here, it says it's A minor. And I can't, this could be accurate, this could also not be accurate, but I kind of like to let it sort of say, cool, if that's A minor, let's write a song in A minor. It just kind of helps eliminate any but what if this and what if that? If it says it's A minor, okay, it kind of gives you a good amount of restrictions, if that makes sense. So the beautiful thing I love about Ableton and music production nowadays is I can now preset the key that I want to write in. So to do that, you just hit the scale button and then you go A, and then we want to be in minor, bang. Now I can see all of these highlighted notes. If I want to write out a note on that highlighted note, it is technically in the key of A minor. So it's kind of just the work's there. So all we now need to do is just write something that has rhythm. So there's many different ways to write bass lines, and I by no means am the person that writes the golden rule book of this is how you should do something and then this is how you should do something. But something I always like to aim for at first is I find the root note of the key. So we're dealing in A minor, and it will always tell you on the left-hand side, so see we've got A3 and A2, that is the root note of the key. So I will just draw out some random notes, but I will keep it consistent on that root note. So it might sound something like, let's do something. Let's So something like that, right? It's a good rhythm. It may get a little bit repetitive, but that's okay for now. So if I just duplicate this out, let's have a listen. I don't know about you guys, that's actually not too bad. Lucky! I'll just note there is so many times where I do not write out a good bass line the first time, so that was definitely a luck one. So as I mentioned earlier, anytime you add something in, I personally like to bring the level down because, again, if you don't, frequencies are fighting for other frequencies. This is just sort of a personal rule that I've sort of adapted. It's, again, by no means the end all be all of that, but whatever I set my kick at, I like to set my bass line 1 dB lower than the kick, because I think in a dance record, the most driving element of any dance record is a kick. I think we can all agree on that. That's what the kick is, what drives the record. And then underneath that, you want to have the bass line. Now, sometimes if the bass line is a little bit too aggressive in terms of volume, it can get really muddy with the kick. So you want to have something stand out about it, and the most simplest way that we can instantly do without having to worry about, compression, limiting, clipping, and all that sort of jazz is just literally do it by the volume. So it's a personal preference. Give it a go if you haven't already. But let's have a listen to it now. Banger already. Cool. So now let's hear what it sounds like with the vocals. Probably call it a day, eh? Sorry, so can you repeat that?
Do the audio, the actual melody.
The melody?
Yeah.
So what, just then?
Yeah. So you know how it's like the actual song, like the melody of it.
So if we're talking about the melody of the song, this is technically the only melody I've written out. So melody, single note hits. So a bass line is always a melody. A harmony would be multiple notes or a chord. So this is the only thing that I've sort of drawn out as a melody, because bass lines are always a melody. But that's just, I always go, start with the kick. If I have a vocal sample, I'll then go to a vocal sample, and then start with the bass line, then I'll go drums and furthermore. It is always different, and that's the one thing I would definitely say. Because I'm showing you guys how I would start a record, it would be different every time. So don't think you have to always start it off this way. Embrace, I think, I'd maybe start a record from a rim shot one hit sample. If that's something that you've never done before but you want to challenge yourself, embrace it. Best advice I can give. But it's always different, so I hope that answers that question. So on my bass line, I always have Kickstart 2 as a sidechain. For those in the room that may not know what a sidechain is, a sidechain will duck the volume of a sound and it will make it repetitive. So you always want to sidechain a bass line to the kick. So I will look at the pattern of this, and we can see it's ducking down at this point. Something I like to do is I like to set the sidechain input down here to the kick group that I've set. So now when we see it, we can see the yellow kick, and we can see the relationship between the two. Now, I only learnt this 2-3 months ago, but by default, for anyone that has used Nicky Romero Kickstart 2, it's always going to be on sync. And sync is fine, it's all good, but I don't know if anyone noticed, when I hit spacebar, you'll notice there's a little bit of latency between the kick and the bass line. See this gap? So with latency, the more you add into your project, the more it's going to just take more processing power to, do the thing. So the more you do that, that kick actually starts getting further and further away. So to get rid of all that, set it to audio, and it's always going to be on the money, and you actually get a much more cleaner sidechain. I could instantly hear it in that speaker. I don't know about you guys. Does that make sense? Sweet. So once I set that sidechain on my bassline, I would argue that the sidechain on your bassline would be the most important sidechain if you're wanting to bring down, duck any volume of any other part of your record. So once you figure out the sidechain of your bassline, I literally just copy and paste that on any channel that I need sidechain, because by doing that, it's following the exact same pattern. So you're not having to change the percentages, change the actual curve. It's just you're working smarter, not harder. So I would always take the sidechain from the bassline, and then I would put it on my vocal chain. Now, because I've copied it and it's saying, okay, we're gonna sidechain it from the kick. If I leave it like that, it's okay. It sounded okay, the speaker's there, but the bass line is the only sidechain that I would actually activate this input. So now I'm going to go back into the actual sidechain input, go no input, and then if I've done that, I need to go back to sync. Because if I leave it on audio, that message is going to happen. So no sidechain triggers detected because there's no audio that's been routed to it. So I go sync. And now when I show people this, sometimes people go, all right, well, you just said that if you go on sync, there's always going to be a bit of latency, right? And that latency, as we add more to the project, is going to, mean that there's going to be a delay. On things like vocals, on things like synths, sometimes having a delay is not a bad thing. If anything, it actually can show more of like a humanization to it, or like a human error, but not even really. Like, we're all human, and we like to listen to music made by humans, unless we like to listen to music from AI, which I hope no one, yeah, exactly. So having it on sync on everything else, it does work. Now, would I have it at 100%? It's dealer's choice, it's different per song, but normally what I do is I sort of wind it back. I'll probably go to like 50%, so that way you can hear the slight like ducking down of the sidechain, but it's not doing it so aggressively that you're not like hearing the fullness of the actual vocal. So I'll probably just leave it at 50%, and I will probably go back and change that 27,000 times. But that's okay, because we're always going to chop and change and always going to adapt to it. So now that I've got the vocal and it's looped the way I need to, it's sidechain, I've got the kick, I've got the bass line, this is where I'm going to start with my drums. Now, when I open this, I have my drums sort of processed, like I've got my main hat, and then I'll go right and left hats to feed in the stereo width. I'll then do the same with the claps, and then I've got my top loops. So I love using loops. Loops are just pre-recorded bits of audio. You can get it for like a bar, 2 bars, whatever. And ever since I've started using loops, loops have helped aid the quickness of that I can write a song. So use loops. The biggest producers, the biggest artists, they're all using loops. You don't have to create every single song from just a single one-shot hit. It's okay to use loops, because you can also cut up the loops, you can also take a sound from the loops. There's many different things you can do. But what I'll do is I'll probably just go to my samples over here. Also, side note, sample selection and organization. Be organized. As you can see over here, I've got my folders organized as best as I can. Sample packs, and I've got all the sample packs that I've downloaded. I've got one that's called Caird. This is like my go-to sounds of like loops and stuff that I normally go to. If you are organized, your efficiency of writing music is going to increase by like 20-fold. So be organized, plain and simple. Thank you. So, because we're dealing in tops and just to sort of get a good sort of one, so how about I go through some and you guys tell me which ones you like, and let's see if we can make it work. Sound good? Yeah. Sweet. Nice. Alright, so I'm going to just chuck that one in, and we're just going to turn that down in the mix, so let's have a listen. On the money. Cool. Now, something I like to do from here, instead of duplicating it out, is I like to go into the audio editor, and some Abletons will default the warp mode by complex. So in Ableton, there are different warp modes. The modes just give you different textures. Now, because drums are so transient heavy, transients are these peaks on the waveform, and that's actually what Ableton uses to register sort of like the tempo of the sample. So I want to preserve those, and I want those to be essentially emphasized. So the best warp mode is going to be beats. Go figure, because we're making a beat. How good? So when you do that, you may hear it, you may not. It's subtle differences, but the fact that a bunch of you just nodded your head means, yeah, you can hear the difference. Now, swing and groove. I always put a swing and groove on my drums and my bass line, because this just adds, you can set different swings. You can either do 16 swings, 8 swings, and I could jump into the whole technical formality of it all, but essentially at the end of like the sample, it would just delay it or bring it forward, adding that humanization part to it. And as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of what we all enjoy listening to, is the humanization of it. So I always go swing 16 to 54. Use it, I don't gatekeep shit, it works. So now that I've done that, and again, it's going to be subtle, but when you start adding more and more to it, you start hearing that swing, and it really just sounds like a human's made it, which I'm human, so I've made it. Sweet. I'm just going to make sure now that the bass line does actually... Oh, it didn't have the groove. All right, so let's put this on. Already I can tell that there's a bit more of like a groove in just some of the notes. So yeah, so you swing and groove. Cool. Now that I've got a top loop, would I stop at just one top loop? Absolutely not. I add so much shit into my projects. It is ridiculous. But I go off the mindset, it is so much better to add as much as you can into a project, because you can then always mute the channel, or you could always just like minimize it and not remove it completely. Whereas if you did it the other way, where you're like, I need to get the exact sound, an exact sample, an exact top loop, what you're gonna end up doing is spending so much time like on the internet and trying to find the right sample, and you're not actually spending that time making the music. So just continuously throw shit in there and see what, it is kind of like the saying, you're throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks, but this is like, it's like good shit. So let's do the same, let's go through the other top loops. Yeah, I got it here, so we'll try that one. So we chuck it in, bring this one down. Not bad, I like it. So I'll do the same, I'll go on there, we'll go beats, we'll change the groove, and let's now have a listen to this. Perfect, awesome. Now, I just want to show you guys this one tip. It is a very, very common tip within music production, but I always like showing it. I just need to find the right sample. Perfect. So, let me just bring this one down. I'm just going to solo this so we can all hear it. So, we have this sample here. You know, it's pretty out there, it's pretty abrupt, but if you wanted to tighten up that sample, so make it more like shorter, snappier, we can do that within Ableton. The way to do that, you want to go into the Ableton audio editor like this. You want to change the warp mode to beats. Down in the preserve, you want to make sure transients is on, because again, the transients are all these peaks in the waveform. Now this drop down here, you want to make sure that you're hitting the arrow against the wall. That's essentially the one shot. So when you do that, and I hit spacebar, we're not going to hear anything different to what we just heard, right? But have a listen what happens when I bring this 100 down. You ready? So what that is doing is essentially it's shortening the transients, because at 100, this delay here, this delay here, this delay here is at its full. But when we bring it down, it's actually shortening it, and then that is making it more snappy, making your drums stand out that little bit more, because it's just preserving to the transients, which are the peaks. Make sense? So sometimes when I'm just dealing with loops, if I'm like, you add in, and it's like, it's just sounding a little bit too full on, I'll just, you know, do this to some of them just to see if I can make it fit. So you know, can leave it at that, you know, that 39, 40. And you know, I was just doing this as an example. Let's see if it actually works. I like that. You notice it, did you hear that difference, right? Where it goes like, Yeah, I'm definitely keeping that one in, that's for sure. Got to make sure the groove's on, sweet, and we duplicate across. Alright, so here's what we have so far. Cool. Alright, so people will start off. Oh, yeah, question at the back.
Can you solo that layer and do that?
Just this one?
Show us like do 100% and then like,
So you want to do the 100 and then bring it down again?
yeah.
Yep, cool, absolutely. So, here it is at 100. And then I'm going to put it at 20. Ready? Exactly. Don't mind me, just getting mic'd up. Cool. Was that a good example at the back?
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Alright, so we're going to keep that one there. And so everyone's going to start off a record with a loop. It's going to be maybe like a 4-bar loop. It might be an 8-bar loop, a 16-bar loop like I've got here. And I like to start off with 16 bars, so I always like to start the record kind of like a, this would sort of be like the first baseline introduction. Because in house music, you normally hear like a 16 bars of just like drums, so no bass line. And then once that 16 bars is gone, it's then the bass line. So that would be. So after that 16 bars, what we can do is we can duplicate a lot of this over and then start creating the different sections. So if we start them with the bass line and the kick, just because we've got them grouped together, I'm just going to duplicate them over across twice because we're dealing in 16 bars. So from here, this would essentially be my bridge. Now, if I just kept it the same, like it's not bad, but generally with a bridge, you want to make it obvious that it's a bridge. And with a bridge, you take a lot of items away to then snap it back to the drop. It's like that push-pull tension release. You never want a listener to be able to predict what is about to happen in the next section. Because if you make your music predictable and it's that repetitiveness, has that repetitiveness to it essentially, that's where people then start to lose interest. And yeah, so you always want to make sure that each section you're making is very much identifiable. So something easy that I do is I always have on my main kick group, I will just have an EQ and I'll just have a steep times 4 curve set there. And then what I do is just before the bridge is about to start, which is about here, I am going to automate the frequency. So right click, show automation. And you can see we've got the 14 here, but I will set an anchor point there. And then I'll probably bring it up, maybe I'm gonna right click, let's just go 170. 170 has been a number that's been working for me. So it's kind of be like this. Cool, now if you do this to the kick, do this to the bass line as well, because we haven't done it to the bass line, and what we can just hear, like the bass line's cutting through. So like if you don't do it to the bass line at the same time, it kind of sounds like it's out of place. So that's why I always have same sort of deal. Baseline, 14. Let's right click that, show automation, and bring it up, right click, 170, bang. And automatically that's already different to what we've heard. So that is our bridge section. Now I know some people go, oh well, why can't, like I've got a low end group, why don't you just put an EQ on that group and call it a day? I probably do some things the old-fashioned way, so I probably work a lot more harder and some things like that, and that's okay. But I also like to adjust these EQ, automation. Sometimes I might want to really automate it out bass line, but I wouldn't want the same on the kick. So that's why grouping is something that I would highly recommend. And everyone's got a group different, but if you've got key elements in a dance record, I would argue a kick, a bass line, your main hats, your main clap, tops, essentially your groove, that's the main group there, your snare rolls, your synths, effects, kind of just how I've like got mine all grouped there. That would be the best recommendation of always having like, different automations on that, because then you can just target it different each time, and it's not like grouped as a whole, if that makes sense. So I've got this automation here, and let's just do the same. Let's just duplicate these across, and let's just see what we've got. I think that keeps a good sort of like movement to it. Now, if this is the first section where like the bass line sort of is introduced, now that I've got the vocals here, I don't actually want it in this section. If anything, I think we should have it in the bridge, because that's the part where it's like, ooh, after this, the after party. That's the part that's like, oh, are we dancing? We're going to the after party? What are we doing? So I will then literally just, actually, I can just duplicate this all across. I think that might just be the easiest way. And I would want this to repeat into the drop. So we just keep duplicating it across. And then from here, delete all that. So this is what we will have. And then maybe we could do something like this. Take out this section. Didn't snap it back, did I? So that's actually a good thing. When you set your automation on the your EQ, make sure you put it back, because I was ready to send it and I didn't get to send it. Learn from my mistakes, people, please. So you can just literally copy and paste over automation in the automation view. This is what I'm doing. Just a standard Command C, Command V, or Control C, Control V for the Windows users in the room. Now let's try this again. How simple is that record? Thank you. But less is always more, in my opinion. And just tap into the less is more. I'll always preach that. If any of you have ever, done a music production lesson with me at Lab 6, I always preach less is more. So that essentially, we've got now your first introduction of where the bass line would be introduced. You've then got the bridge, and then we've got the next drop there. Now, here's where we can start adding different things, but I like to spend a little bit of time on the bridge. And I watched a TikTok video recently, and I love watching TikTok videos to learn about music production stuff. And it was the producer's name was Ranger Truco, and he was talking about the different sections, and a bridge should always be about sending the audio signals as wide as you can, and then you want to automate it when it comes back, because when it drops, that's the hard-hitting element. That's where you want people to dance. And when I watched that, I'd obviously had my own methods, but then I watched it. I was like, that's actually such a good way to explain it. So what would be the most easiest way to sort of, I guess, put it in a project that is that less is more type way? And what I sort of learned, and again, this could be right, this could be wrong, but I've got my groups here. So what I like to do is I will, hang on, let me do this. So I'll right click and I'll literally group all the tracks. And then in my audio effects, I'll chuck a utility in there. Utility, it's like Batman's utility belt. It's got fucking everything, it's great. But this knob here, width. When we talk about width, if I increase the width of that, that is going to send the width of all the audio signal to the, the stereo field, which is left and right. Now, you may or may not be able to hear it because we've only got one speaker set up, but essentially, what I like to do is I like to automate this. So we'll go here, and we've got it up here at 100%. So we'll set a couple anchor points here because we want it to make sure we go back to 100%. So when we do it, so I might just increase this up to say like 200. And you can kind of feel it subtly just get a little bit wider, even though we've only got the one speaker. But then I've curved it to go down, so it's just getting there, getting there, getting there. As I said, because we've only got the one speaker, it's not really the best example, but try that at home on your speakers, on your headphones, and you'll hear it happen and you'll be like, oh shit, this is sick. Trust. Now, in this bridge, we can add many different things, but probably one of the most iconic ones that people would use and I would personally use, snare rolls. So I am going to find a snare roll, and yes, shameless promo, I am going to go into my sample pack, available to purchase now, go get it. So let's go drum loops, let's go snare roll loops, and I'm going to just find one, and yeah, let's do that one, why not? So let's just add this in. Now I need to make sure that it is warped correctly, which it should be, excellent. So let's hear how this sounds now. Let me actually bring this back here. Bosh, done. Sweet. So who here in the room, what do we like to add in our bridges? Going up. I'll take any suggestions. Rises. Excellent. What's that? Excellent. We'll start with the rises. So when it comes to the rises, I will just, I've got a bunch of like my own rises I've created, and there's so many good presets out there. So sound design. When it comes to sound design, a lot of people think that you need to understand every single knob, every single thing, and quite frankly, if you have that time to learn it all, by all means do that. But we all live our lives, we all have work, we all have other commitments, right? So use presets. Presets are there, they've been made by professionals that work for that sound design company, and a lot of the presets can actually be usable. So that's something that I've learned in my time to just experiment with these presets, not trying to create my own stuff. And it actually helped me learn more about sound and how to actually create the sounds. So then I was then eventually able to create my own sounds. But on the topic, rises, so I would want to go here. So I'm going to right click, insert MIDI clip, make sure it's in the key of A minor, because as I mentioned, I don't know how to play music on an instrument, so I need this. It's okay, we're gonna keep it in the root note. Let's just start here, and we're just gonna draw it all out the way. Now, I love using Serum 1, Serum 2. I feel like a lot of people here in the room would use the same. So I'm just gonna load up a Serum 2, and we're just gonna turn this down, because it's probably, yep, that's very loud and annoying. So I'm just gonna go to my Serum 1 presets, and I think I've got, yes, Kickhead Sound Lab. I used to be called Kickhead, but there are some pretty cool stuff in here. So I think it's this one. Yeah, this one. I like this one. So let's just see how this sounds in the mix. Awesome. Now, when I am adding more and more things into my record, something I like to do is I like to EQ my music along the way. And you've got to be very careful with this, because you don't want to be taking out too much of the song, or like the guts of the song early on. But if you, say for example, put together a record or compose a record, and then you send it off to a mixing and mastering engineer, we've probably all done that, and we've probably all invested hundreds of dollars, and you get it back and you're like, wait, what did they actually do? I don't know. Probably 80% of what a mix engineer does is EQ. And EQing is essentially just rounding off the frequencies, so you can take the low frequencies out of a certain element, and that then allows breathing room for the other low end frequencies. So I would always load up in my audio effects just a EQ8, and first of all, before I do anything, I will see where the frequencies are hitting. So I can see there's a bit of low end information in there, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of low end really sort of happening there. So I'm going to just change this to a ×4, probably bring it back to about here. And it's subtle changes, but when you start adding more and more, you really will notice what the difference does when you EQ every single channel. So same deal with the vocal, right? When we play it from here, the vocal, the bass line, the kick, the drums, it's got a good groove, right? But sometimes just simply rolling off some of that low end of the vocal, and you want to obviously do this to taste, make sure you're not taking out the crux of it. I don't know about you guys, but I noticed the bass line, it actually stood out a little bit more. I'll play it again. So with it on, without. So they start merging a little bit without. On again. Could we hear that? So EQ everything, but when you do it in like a subtle way. Don't be like, oh yeah, I need to take all the low end out, so that means this, because then you're going to get, it's just going to sound terrible. So do it in moderation, but yeah, EQing is like really, really important. And I would recommend do this along the way, because one, you're going to look after your ears. If you don't bring down the volume and you don't EQ, your ears are going to have a really hard time, like be really, really stressed. And you will just automatically get a cleaner record from what you're doing, if that makes sense. Cool. So we have 3 minutes left. I kind of wanted to keep that 3 minutes to sort of just any questions. And I see someone, hand at the back. Any question?
Yeah. You talk about EQing and stuff. How you have 3 top loops on top of each other. How do you kind of like make those not clash if they're on that same like high frequency?
That's a very good question. So let's start with the first one here. I actually haven't EQ'd any of the top loops, so a very good question to ask. So I find that if you're bringing down the volume of a top loop and you're EQing it off subtly, you can still layer them on, and it actually helps enhance the transients and enhance the actual drums. Because it kind of adds like a layer and then another layer, and then it gives the thickness of like the drums. You know, if anyone's ever said, yeah, your drums are sounding so full, most of the time it's because you've added a bunch of layers to it because it's adding to it. Now, if you added those layers and you didn't bring down the volume, that would be very, very piercing in your ears. So I'm just going to do a quick run right here. That's all I would mainly do. And the big thing I would always focus on is make sure any low-end information, it doesn't need low-end information. Some hats, some claps, yes, you do, but just like we did with the vocals, it helps make the bass line stand out. It makes the kick stand out that little bit more. And that is always the driving element of a record. So does that answer the question? Sweet. All right, we have time for one more question if anyone has. Go for it. So my sample pack, which is available to purchase. No, I have been hunting for samples for, oh god, I've been making music 7 years. So it's something that you're gonna dive deep for it. Are we, hands up if we're DJs in the room? Sweet, a lot of you. How do you find your music? Anyone tell me?
Boring sometimes.
What?
Bit bored of it sometimes.
Beatport. But how do you find the songs you want in Beatport? You find it. You crate dig. You know, before we were in the digital age of DJing, people would go to vinyl stores, record stores, and literally crate dig because it was milk crates of vinyls. Producers are doing the same thing digitally. We're crate digging for sounds. So it's something that you look far and wide in. But there are really, really good sample packs. Something I'd probably advise if you have, like, say, 3 artists that you vibe with and you like playing their music, go into their socials and see if they've ever released a sample pack. Because if you love their music, you're gonna love the sample packs. Quickly.
You put your sample pack link on the screen.
I need to get a hotspot action going there. But if you go to my Instagram, you'll be able to find it there. Don't worry about that. Sweet. Okay. Thank you everyone for attending the Starting a Track from Scratch workshop. I hope you guys have learned something. As I mentioned, this is my first time, so this has been amazing to have you all here. Thank you very much. And the last thing I'm going to teach everyone, save everything. Because I can't tell you how many times I've done this. I'm just going to call this, yep, we've all, I'm assuming we've all forgot to save something. Yeah, let's just go after party and just something simple, bang. All right, if you give us just a couple minutes while we get ready for this demo drop and just talk amongst yourselves.